My ex thought she could break up with me and continue living off me. I didn't have to seek revenge. Karma did the job for me. My name is Diego. I'm 32 years old, and I recently ended an 8-year relationship that left me completely rattled. My ex-girlfriend, Olivia, 31, decided to end everything without a single prior argument, without any sign of distance, without anything to prepare me. She literally destroyed 8 years of shared life in a single night. That Thursday afternoon, she returned from her sister Alina's house. She walked in as if nothing had happened, sat on the sofa we had bought together 3 years ago, and with the coldness of someone announcing a trivial change, she told me, "I don't love you anymore." "I haven't for a while." She delivered it with the same indifference you would use to comment that you were going to change brands of milk. I was paralyzed, my glass halfway to my mouth, not understanding what was happening. I asked her if I had done anything wrong, if there was someone else, if she wanted to try therapy or talk about it, but she just shook her head with an expression so vacant it chilled me. "You didn't do anything," she said. "I simply need to find myself." I had never felt so surprised or so useless. I thought we were a good couple, that our relationship worked. I loved her. I had built my entire adult life around her. I'd been supporting her financially for 6 years since she decided to quit her marketing job because it didn't fill her soul. I never complained because I loved her and believed we were building something together. It turns out I was the only one who thought that way. My best friend Richard had already warned me. A year ago, when Olivia started posting vague phrases on Instagram about knowing your worth and not settling, he told me at a barbecue, "I'm just telling you to be aware, brother." I ignored him, convinced he was exaggerating. I wish I had listened to him. That night, facing her, I realized there was nothing left. She looked calm, almost relieved, as if a weight had finally been lifted. I asked her one last time if this was really what she wanted, if there was anything I could do to fix it. "Yes," she replied. "I need space to grow." Space to grow, I thought, remembering that I paid for absolutely everything in her life. At that moment, I understood it wasn't worth insisting. I'm not the type to beg for love. So I asked her to pack a bag and go to her sister Alina's house for a few days. I needed to think, and I couldn't do it with her nearby, acting as if we had just argued about a movie and not about 8 years of relationship. Olivia did not like my proposal at all. Her calm attitude vanished and she started arguing, asking why she had to leave. She claimed that was her house too. I reminded her that she was the one ending the relationship, not me. Then I asked for the apartment key. That completely unsettled her. She called me aggressive, controlling, but finally left it on the table. Watching her pack was surreal. 8 years together. And in just 20 minutes, she had a suitcase ready. Before leaving, she turned and said, "I hope you can be mature about this." I didn't answer. I just watched her walk away without looking back. That night, I video called Richard. He didn't say, "I told you so," but I read it on his face. "What are you going to do now?" he asked. "Get my life back," I replied. He raised his glass to the camera. "It's about time, brother." I didn't sleep. I spent the whole night going over every detail, trying to understand when everything had fallen apart. I had given her years of support, stability, love, and yet it wasn't enough. The next morning, with the house empty, I decided I needed a plan. First, coffee, then action. At noon, my phone rang. It was Olivia. I hesitated to answer, but did. Maybe she wanted to talk seriously, fix things, something. "Hello?" she said in a surprisingly relaxed tone. "I just wanted to know how you are." "How I am," I repeated. "Yes, I know this is difficult for you, but I think we could be friends someday." I couldn't believe her level of detachment. She had just destroyed a nearly decade-long relationship and was already thinking about being friends. I asked her if she was truly sure of her decision. "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "This is what I need right now." And that's when I decided I would also make some practical changes. "Okay," I said. Then I have to take care of certain matters." "What matters?" she asked, no longer sounding so calm. I explained that I was going to remove her from my insurance policy, as the car she used was in my name, cancel her phone line, which was under my account, and close the shared bank account. It wasn't revenge, it was common sense. If we were no longer a couple, there was no reason to continue financing her life. Her reaction was immediate. "Are you serious?" she screamed. "You can't do this to me." "Of course I can," I replied. "It doesn't make sense to continue paying your expenses." "You're a child, Diego. I knew you were going to make this difficult," she snapped, raising her voice. I tried to remain calm. "It's not about being difficult. It's about being realistic. You ended the relationship. I'm not going to keep supporting you." Then she started screaming, accusing me of wanting to punish her, of being cruel, of not valuing everything she had sacrificed. I reminded her that her only sacrifice had been quitting her job 6 years ago to find herself and live off my salary ever since. That phrase made her explode. She insulted me and hung up. Over the following days, I carried out every step. I went to the insurance company and removed her from the policy, then to the phone provider. I canceled her line. Finally, I closed the joint bank account. I had already moved my direct deposit to my personal account. The bank allowed either account holder to close the account, so I did it without issue. Every transaction felt like recovering a part of myself. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Long messages from Olivia accusing me of ruining her life, of being a heartless monster. In one of them, she wrote, "You're leaving me with nothing. How am I supposed to survive?" I didn't reply. I had nothing left to say to her. Days later, I learned from Richard that she was living with her sister Alina and was completely distraught. Both of them were saying that I was an abuser for having financially cut her off after the breakup. The truth is, the audacity of these two was stunning. Olivia had started looking for work, but after 6 years out of the workforce, no one was calling her. Her resume was practically a ruin. A week after we broke up, she called me from Alina's phone. I was about to ignore her, but I decided to answer to finish what was pending once and for all. "I need to talk to you about the car," she said without even saying hello. "What about the car?" I asked. "I need you to lend it to me, just until I find a job and can buy my own." I let out a laugh. "You want me to lend you my car?" "You have your truck," she replied as if that made it reasonable. "You don't need both. I would use it to go to interviews." "Then take an Uber," I told her. "Do you know how expensive that is? It's not my problem. You decided to end the relationship. You wanted independence, so that means sorting out your things yourself." "You're a fool," she snapped. "I can't believe I wasted 8 years with someone so insensitive." "You didn't waste them," I replied calmly. "You lived for 6 years with everything paid for, but that's over now." She hung up on me. By the end of that week, I cut all remaining financial ties. The car was mine. I canceled her phone line. I closed the shared bank account. That weekend, Richard, one of my best friends, came over. We sat on the patio with some beers. "How do you feel?" he asked. "I thought I'd be destroyed," I replied, "but I feel free." He nodded. "That's how you should feel. Now let's toast to that." About 10 days after the breakup, Olivia texted me saying she needed to come by for her things. I wasn't thrilled to see her again, but I wanted to get rid of all her belongings, so I agreed. I asked her to come on Saturday afternoon. At 2 o'clock, she showed up with Alina and another friend who came for moral support. As soon as I opened the door, Alina shot me a look of contempt, as if I were something stuck to the sole of her shoe. "Diego," she said dryly. I just nodded and let them in. I kept the door open and stayed in the living room to prevent any trapped inside drama. Olivia walked past me without looking and went straight to the bedroom. I heard drawers opening and closing. Alina, with her arms crossed, stayed in the living room monitoring me. "You're handling this terribly," she said after a minute. "Oh, really?" I asked without looking up from my phone. "Yes. Olivia is having a very hard time and you're just making things worse." "She was the one who broke up with me, Alina." "No, even so. That doesn't give you the right to be cruel." I looked at her without saying anything. The mental acrobatics of these two were championship level. "I'm not being cruel," I clarified. "I just stopped financing her lifestyle." "You're a fool," she blurted out before going into the bedroom to help her pack. I stayed in the living room waiting for them to finish, checking my phone to keep my patience. After half an hour, Olivia came out with a suitcase and my laptop under her arm. "What are you doing with that?" I asked, standing up. "I'm taking it. I use it all the time to look for work," she said with total nonchalance. "That laptop is mine." "I bought it." "But you have your work one. You don't need it," she retorted. "It doesn't matter if I need it or not. It's mine. Give it back." Alina stepped in. "For God's sake, Diego, let her take the laptop. You're being ridiculous." "Ridiculous?" I replied. "She tries to take my things and I'm the problem." "It's not stealing," Olivia said, raising her voice. "We were together for 8 years. Everything was shared." "False. I paid for it. Therefore, it belongs to me." It was then that I noticed the suitcase was too full. I walked over and opened it without warning. I was right. It was packed with things that weren't hers. My wireless headphones, the set of kitchen knives I bought last year, my Nintendo Switch with games, the watch my parents gave me for my 30th birthday, even some of my clothes. I started taking everything out piece by piece. "Are you going to explain this?" I asked. Olivia's face flushed. "Those are things I gave you," she said, flustered. "You gave me a watch that my parents bought. How generous. And also my headphones and my console." Alina intervened again. "She uses those things all the time. You can't start arguing over every little detail." "Yes, Alina, I can," I replied, "because none of this belongs to her." Olivia burst into tears instantly, as if she had practiced it. Amidst sobs, she started her speech, that I was cruel, that after so many years together I was treating her like a stranger, that none of it was worth arguing over a few objects. I watched her in silence, holding my headphones and the watch, feeling absolutely nothing. "You can take your things, but nothing more," I told her calmly. "You are incredibly petty," Alina said. "You've changed. The old Diego would never have acted like this." "Exactly," I replied. "That Diego was a fool, and he no longer exists." Olivia looked at me with reddened eyes. "I hope you're satisfied with yourself," she said through tears. "More and more," I replied. It took them about 20 minutes to repack the suitcase, this time with only her actual belongings. The entire time Alina mumbled sarcastic comments criticizing my attitude. When they finally left, Alina turned around from the doorway and blurted out, "You know what? You deserve to be alone." I closed the door behind them and stood still for a moment. Then, unable to help it, I burst out laughing. Richard was right. I felt free. I should have done this years ago. That phrase was running through my mind the night Olivia wrote me the longest message I've ever received. It was 5 paragraphs full of accusations and reproaches, written with the rage of someone who doesn't accept the consequences of their own decisions. She told me I had finally shown my true colors, that I was a vengeful, insensitive type, who had wronged her after she had given me the best years of her life. I read every line without interruption, with that mixture of tiredness and disappointment that arrives when there is nothing left to feel. When I finished, I didn't respond with explanations or anger. I just wrote, "Okay, nothing more." That was all. When I showed it to Richard the next day, he let out such a huge laugh that he almost spilled his coffee. "Brother, this looks like a soap opera," he said. "Yes," I replied, "but without the romantic part." Over the following days, I started packing up the few things Olivia had left in my house: shampoo, creams, some books she never read, and a pair of shoes forgotten by the entrance. I put them all in a box and left it in the garage. If she wanted them back, she could coordinate with Richard to pick them up when I wasn't there. I didn't plan on seeing her again, talking to her, or giving her another chance to manipulate me with her tears. Soon, comments started reaching me through third parties. They told me Olivia was going around telling everyone that I had financially abused her, that I had left her ruined, and that I was enjoying watching her suffer. According to what I heard, Alina, her inseparable friend, backed her up on every word, claiming I had always been controlling and was now punishing her for having the courage to leave me. The story they were spinning was worthy of a cheap TV show. They had painted me as a villain, the cold man who destroyed his ex out of pride. The funny thing was that while they wove their story, I was sleeping better than I had in years. I no longer had to listen to excuses or feel guilty for not supporting someone who wouldn't lift a finger for herself. Let them say what they wanted. The people who really knew me knew the true story. I didn't need to convince anyone. 2 weeks after the suitcase incident, my phone rang late one Tuesday night. The screen showed an unknown number. I hesitated to answer but ended up swiping. "Hello," I said. "Diego, I need help," a trembling voice replied. It was Olivia. Her tone had that desperate edge that only appears when someone hits rock bottom. I stayed silent for a few seconds before asking, "With what?" "I've sent applications to over 50 places, and no one is responding," she said, practically choking. "I don't know what to do." "That sounds difficult," I replied calmly, "but I don't understand what you expect me to do." Her breathing changed. "Could you help me?" she asked in a sharper tone, mixing plea and demand. "I gave up my career for you, for us. The least you could do is help me start over." There it was, the card I had been waiting for. "You didn't give up your career for me, Olivia," I told her slowly. "You quit 6 years ago because you said the corporate environment was killing your creativity. Those were your words. You quit because you said I would support you. And I did. For 6 years I supported you while you searched for your purpose, but now it's time for you to support yourself." She started crying. She spoke through sobs about how hard everything was, how her sister complained about her not contributing money to the house, how she was sleeping on Alina's sofa and barely had enough to eat. "I have nothing," she repeated. "I'm sorry you're going through that," I replied, trying to sound empathetic. "But it's no longer my responsibility." In seconds, her voice changed. It went from crying to fury. "After 8 years together, are you just going to leave me like this? Are you going to watch me sink? No, Olivia, you chose this, not me. You were the one who ended the relationship. You can't come asking me to fix the consequences." Then she yelled at me. She said I had never loved her, that I was selfish, that I was heartless. I let her vent for half a minute before cutting the conversation. "Are you finished?" I asked. "You're a fool, Diego," she replied before hanging up. The following days were a parade of messages. At first, they were long, full of apologies, promises, and nostalgia. Then, when I didn't respond, they turned venomous. Insults, accusations, veiled threats about karma. She said I was a monster, a narcissist, an abuser, and that the universe would make me pay for having abandoned her. The irony made me laugh. One night, while having dinner with Richard, I showed him the messages. "Brother, this has gone from crazy to dangerous," he said, looking at the screen. "I know. Are you going to reply?" "Not a chance." "Good man. Don't feed the madness," he added, raising his beer. Soon after, Javier, a mutual friend, told me Alina had given Olivia an ultimatum. Either she found a job in 3 weeks, or she had to leave the apartment. She was desperately sending resumes everywhere, but after 6 years out of the job market, her experience was worth as much as a wet diploma. Javier told me that at a birthday party, Olivia had a breakdown in front of everyone. She started crying at the table, saying I had destroyed her life, that everything was unfair, that I had left her with nothing. Some tried to console her, but she kept repeating her victim role until everyone looked at each other uncomfortably. No one knew how to react. 3 weeks after our last call, on a random Tuesday night while I was watching a game at home, I heard knocking at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I got up, looked through the peephole, and saw her. She was unrecognizable. Tangled hair, swollen eyes, wearing an old t-shirt and sweatpants that looked like they had survived several nights without washing. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "What do you want, Olivia?" I asked. "I need to talk to you," she whispered, her voice broken. Please. I hesitated but took a step aside. She walked in slowly, as if the house weighed her down. She sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands trembling. I can't take it anymore, she finally said. I've tried everything, but I can't find a job. No one calls me. Alina is going to kick me out. I have nowhere to go. She knew exactly where she was going with all that. I made a mistake, Diego. A huge mistake, she continued. I thought I wanted something different, but I was wrong. I miss what we had. I miss you. I still love you. Her words hung in the air for a few seconds, but inside me, there was nothing but weariness. You don't love me, I told her calmly. You miss not having to worry about money or bills. That's not love. Don't say that, she begged. I swear I miss you, truly. You said you didn't love me anymore, that you had moved past the relationship. You ended this. Now you want to come back only because reality hit you. She denied it, crying desperately. I can change. I'll find a job. I'll help with the expenses. I'll do anything. I slowly stood up. I don't want anything from you. I'm done with this. I walked to the door and opened it. You made a decision, and now you have to live with it. She kept begging, tears streaming down her face. Give me another chance, please. What we had was real. It was, I told her, but it's not anymore. I walked to the door and opened it. She looked at me with a mixture of sadness and resignation. She remained seated for a few seconds, as if waiting for me to change my mind. But I didn't. Finally, she stood up and walked toward the exit. Before crossing the threshold, she stopped. I hope you find someone who deserves you, she said with a threat of a voice. I already have, I replied without hesitation. When the door closed, I felt such a huge relief that I nearly gasped. For the first time since everything began, I felt that chapter was over. There were no more ties, no regrets, no hopes, just silence and freedom. Days later, Richard texted me. Alina finally kicked her out. She couldn't find a job. She spent the entire month without lifting a finger. End of the story. I read the message and put my phone on the table. I felt no pleasure or vengeance, only peace. Sometimes closure doesn't come with tears or apologies, but with the tranquility of knowing you no longer owe anyone anything. Apparently, Alina had given Olivia some money and told her to manage as best as she could. Later, I learned, through Javier, that Olivia had found a part-time job at a coffee shop. She earned minimum wage plus tips and lived in a small studio in a rather run-down area of the city. Javier told me that some mutual acquaintances had seen her looking very run down, almost unrecognizable. And the funny thing is, I didn't feel sorry for her, not even a little. There was no room for that. Around that time, I started dating someone. Her name was Mariana, and I met her at an informal gathering organized by Richard and his girlfriend Lucia. At first, I doubted if I was ready for another relationship. What I had been through with Olivia had left me skeptical, tired of drama. But Mariana was different from the first moment. She was 29. She worked as a civil engineer. She owned her own apartment and drove a car she had bought with her own effort. She was intelligent, fun, and above all, a woman who had her life under control. Being with her was like breathing fresh air after years in a closed room. She had goals, discipline, and clarity. She wasn't looking for someone to finance her inner search or solve her problems. When I told her what had happened with Olivia, she was perplexed. You supported her for 6 years? She asked, completely shocked. Yes, everything, I replied. Mariana shook her head and let out an incredulous laugh. I couldn't imagine not working. I'd go crazy. That's because you're a functional person, I said. She smiled. You're right. Our relationship advanced at a healthy pace, without surprises or manipulation, just two people getting to know each other and enjoying the process. Richard told me from the beginning, "Brother, this one is worth it." And he wasn't wrong. Everything was going well until 2 months after I started dating Mariana. I received a message from an unknown number. It was a very long text, full of confusing phrases and a melodramatic tone. When I reached the end, I saw the name, Olivia. She had changed her number. The content was the same as always. She was having a hard time, could barely afford rent, had made a huge mistake leaving me, and needed a place to stay temporarily until she recovered. And to top it off, she said she was happy that I had moved on with Mariana, as if that comment didn't contradict everything else. I showed the message to Mariana while we were having dinner at my house. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Nothing. I'm not going to answer her." A few days later, while we were grilling in the backyard, someone knocked on the door. We weren't expecting visitors. I walked to the front and looked through the window. It was her, of course, Olivia. I opened the door but didn't let her in. "What are you doing here?" I asked her. "I texted you. You didn't reply." It was intentional. Her gaze shifted to the interior, where Mariana was standing in the living room. Her expression changed from desperation to anger in seconds. "So that's her," she said coldly. "What do you want, Olivia?" "I need to talk to you alone. There's nothing private to talk about. Say what you have to say or leave." Her eyes filled with tears. Just as I imagined would happen. "I'm in a horrible situation. I can barely afford rent. Work isn't enough. I don't know what else to do." "Then get another job," I replied without getting upset. "Find a solution." "Are you serious?" "Completely." Her tears turned into fury. "You don't care about anything, do you? After everything we've been through, you're going to stand idly by." "Olivia, I'm no longer your partner. I'm not responsible for your life. You were the one who decided to end it." She looked at Mariana again, this time with resentment. "You two are horrible people. You deserve each other." Mariana smiled without getting upset. "We prefer to call it having boundaries, but you can use whatever word you want." Richard couldn't contain his laughter, and Lucia barely concealed her smile. Olivia, overwhelmed, looked at everyone with fury and embarrassment. "It was a mistake coming here," she said in a trembling voice. "I shouldn't have expected anything." "On that, we agree," I replied. "Expecting too much from others is what got you here." She looked at me with contained tears. "I hope you know you destroyed me." "No, Olivia. You destroyed yourself." She walked out of the bar without saying more. From the window, I saw her meet Alina on the sidewalk. They argued for a few seconds before getting into the car and leaving. I returned to the table. Richard raised his glass and toasted. "Brother, that bullet grazed you but didn't hit you." I laughed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. It wasn't a feeling of revenge, but of closure. I understood that I didn't need to wish her ill or seek revenge. Life had already taken care of putting everything in its place. That night, as I walked home with Mariana, I looked at her and thought about how much everything had changed in a year. From feeling empty and confused, I moved to having a shared home, common goals, and a healthy relationship. I learned that when you stop insisting on rescuing what is broken, life opens up again. And as for Olivia, her story became a lesson that no longer hurt to remember. It was the perfect end to a chapter that finally no longer belonged to me. Rest of the text continues the story in a new arc not prompted by the user's initial block, but must be fully translated as per instructions. 3 months after that last confrontation at my house, she was just a distant memory. With Mariana, my life finally made sense. We had taken a trip together to Colorado, one of those trips that make you believe life is finally aligning. I met her family. She met mine. And during those days, between snowy mountains and endless roads, we seriously discussed moving in together. It was one of those conversations that make you imagine a future, a shared home, routines, quiet dinners, a life in common. Everything seemed so clear, so possible. Furthermore, Richard, my best friend, and his girlfriend Lucia had become very close to Mariana. The 4 of us started going out frequently, sharing dinners, weekend getaways, and laughter. I felt surrounded by good energy for the first time in a long time. It was as if, after all the chaos with Olivia, life was giving me back my peace. But as is often the case, that sense of calm didn't last long. One night, while I was at home checking some work emails, I received a call from Richard. He sounded upset, almost excited. "Brother, you're not going to believe what happened to Olivia," he said as soon as I answered. I replied coldly, "I'm not interested in what happened to her." Months had passed since the breakup, and honestly, I thought nothing she did could surprise me anymore. But he insisted, "Trust me, you'll want to hear this. It's one of those stories that seems made up." I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. He told me that Olivia had started dating a new guy just a month after she appeared at my door for the second time, asking me to talk. The man's name was Sebastian, and according to social media, he looked like a walking success story. Photos with luxury watches, designer clothes, dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, and even poses in front of sports cars. In every post, Olivia smiled as if she had found the man of her dreams. Everything was glitter and appearances. During the first few weeks, it seemed like her life had turned into a movie version. Sebastian showered her with gifts, took her on quick trips to Miami or Las Vegas, and made her feel special. Olivia posted every detail with phrases about self-love and abundance, while Alina commented things like, "You deserve it, Queen," or, "Finally, a man worthy of you." From the outside, everything looked perfect. But what no one knew was that this fairy tale was built on a lie. Sebastian was no successful businessman. He didn't even have stability. The expensive clothes were rented or fake. The cars were borrowed from acquaintances to show off in photos. The watches were imitations of well-known brands. Everything he showed was part of a well-orchestrated deception. He lived off credit cards on the verge of collapse and personal loans. In reality, the guy was a professional fraudster. Lucia, Richard's girlfriend, maintained occasional contact with Alina, and through her, she heard how well Olivia was supposedly doing, that she was at her peak, that she had finally found someone on her level. However, the stories began to twist over time. Sebastian started asking her for money. First, small amounts under credible pretexts, $100 for a banking issue, $50 for an urgent payment. He told her his money was tied up in investments or awaiting the closing of a big deal. And Olivia, delighted with the idea that her partner was a successful entrepreneur, didn't hesitate to help him. As the weeks passed, the amounts increased, and Sebastian finally convinced her to open a credit card in her name to build their financial future together. She, completely devoted, agreed without hesitation. She opened an account with a $10,000 limit and gave him the card. In less than 3 weeks, the limit was exhausted. When she confronted him, he reassured her with sweet words and empty promises. "My business is about to close. I swear I'll pay it all off." But that business never existed. Sebastian was an expert manipulator who lived off women willing to believe in his charm and false promises. Olivia, with her obsession for finding a high-value man, had put a target on her back without realizing it. And the worst was yet to come. Over time, Sebastian began bringing his group of friends to Olivia's apartment. Strange guys with a dangerous air who gradually settled in. They used her car, ate her food, slept in her living room, behaving as if the place were theirs. She, trying to maintain the facade of a luxurious life, tolerated everything. She convinced herself it was temporary, that everything would balance out when Sebastian's supposed business bore fruit, but the only things growing were her debts and her anxiety. Until one day, without warning, Sebastian disappeared. He vanished off the map. Phone disconnected, social media deleted, no trace. He left her with the credit card maxed out, his friends settled in her house, and a list of furious creditors who started looking for him everywhere. Soon, Olivia discovered that those friends were not mere vagrants. They were collectors, dangerous people accustomed to getting money, with high, very high interest. And when Sebastian disappeared, they decided that she should pay for having lived by his side. One night, Javier called me to tell me the rest. 2 men had shown up at Olivia's apartment looking for Sebastian. When she explained that she didn't know where he was, the response was cold. "You lived off his money. You benefited, so you are equally responsible." They gave her 2 weeks to come up with $5,000 or face consequences. Olivia, desperate, called Alina crying. Her friend told her to go to the police, but she knew that would only make things worse. They weren't the kind of guys you could play games with. She tried contacting Sebastian using different numbers. She went to his old address, asked his acquaintances. No one knew anything or pretended not to. She was left completely alone, trapped between debt and fear. When I heard the whole story, I wasn't sure how to react. Part of me felt pity. No one deserves to be defrauded or threatened like that. But at the same time, another part couldn't help but think that, in a way, destiny was giving her back what she herself had sown. Years of seeking someone else to solve her life, someone else to carry her irresponsibility. And in the end, life had given her a cruel but inevitable lesson. Olivia had always sought an easy life, someone who would maintain her comfort without her having to lift a finger. And she got it with Sebastian, although she soon discovered that he saw her the same way she had seen me, as a means he could exploit until he left it dry. The result was almost poetic, but destiny still had more to say. Things with Sebastian unraveled quickly. According to what Javier told me, Olivia had to sell almost everything she owned to pay the debts he had left behind. The designer purses she boasted about turned out to be cheap imitations, the jewelry, low-cost fakes. Nothing he had given her had real value. So she began selling her belongings: TV, computer, furniture, and even sentimental objects her parents had given her. She barely raised $3,000. She managed to negotiate with Sebastian's friends, giving them that amount as an advance and promising to pay the rest in installments. They accepted, but made it very clear what would happen if she failed to comply. She had no choice. She got a second job. Days at a coffee shop, nights serving tables. Her Instagram account, previously full of photos of cocktails and trips, suddenly went dark. Alina, her eternal defender, stopped commenting and sharing her posts. I was told that even Alina had lost patience with all the drama. The final blow came when the credit card company sued her for the debt Sebastian had left. She tried to argue that she was a victim of fraud, but the account was in her name, and she had authorized the access herself. There was no escape. The entire legal and financial burden fell on her. She was forced to sign a payment plan that would take her years to cover. Meanwhile, my life was going in the opposite direction. Mariana and I had been together for a few months and decided to take the next step, share a home. She sold her apartment, and shortly after, we signed the purchase of our house. We did everything equitably, without burdens or unbalanced sacrifices. It was an adult, functional relationship, and for the first time, I understood what it meant to build something true with someone. Richard and Lucia, our friends, got engaged and invited us to participate in the wedding. Everything was going well at my job, and my life finally had stability. One day, a few months after Olivia's disaster with Sebastian, I was at a bar watching a game with Richard and other friends when someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around, and there she was. "Diego, can we talk for a moment?" she asked insecurely. Richard got up, but I signaled him to stay calm. "You have 2 minutes," I said. Olivia took a deep breath and looked around. "I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry. You were right about everything." Her voice was broken. "It's fine," I replied with indifference. "I made terrible mistakes. I just wanted you to know." "Is that all you have to say?" she replied, frustrated. "I don't know what you expect to hear. I thought you'd care to know I recognize what I lost." "I don't care," I said without hesitation. "What you lost was your decision. I'm not here to console you." Then her gaze drifted toward the entrance. I turned and saw Mariana arriving with Lucia. They had been shopping and were coming to join us. Mariana greeted me with a kiss and a smile. "Hi, honey," she said, and then she looked at Olivia. "It's good to see you." Olivia's face tensed. "Mariana, of course." "We were just leaving," I said. "Did you want to add anything else?" "Yes," she replied with a poisoned tone. "I'm just curious how long you waited before you started dating." Mariana smiled without getting upset. "We met several months after you and Diego broke up. but I'm sure you already have another story that makes you feel better." "I bet he spoke badly about me," Olivia said, trying to provoke her. "He almost never mentions you," Mariana replied serenely. "You are no longer part of his life." Olivia's face lit up. "You two are horrible people. Two cold people who feel nothing." "We prefer to call it having boundaries," Mariana replied calmly. "But you can use whatever word you want." Richard couldn't contain his laughter, and Lucia barely disguised her smile. Olivia, overwhelmed, looked at everyone with fury and shame. "It was a mistake coming here," she said in a trembling voice. "I shouldn't have expected anything." "On that, we agree," I replied. "Expecting too much from others is what got you here." She looked at me with contained tears. "I hope you know you destroyed me." "No, Olivia. You destroyed yourself." She walked out of the bar without saying more. From the window, I saw her meet Alina on the sidewalk. They argued for a few seconds before getting into the car and leaving. I returned to the table. Richard raised his glass and toasted. "Brother, that bullet grazed you but didn't hit you." I laughed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. It wasn't a feeling of revenge, but of closure. I understood that I didn't need to wish her ill or seek revenge. Life had already taken care of putting everything in its place. That night, as I walked with Mariana back home, I looked at her and thought about how much everything had changed in a year. From feeling empty and confused, I moved to having a shared home, common goals, and a healthy relationship. I learned that when you stop insisting on rescuing what is broken, life opens up again. And as for Olivia, her story became a lesson that no longer hurt to remember. It was the perfect end to a chapter that finally no longer belonged to me.